Jill Savage and Matthew Peterson here at America Fest, and we are excited to welcome Khalil Habib. He's a Hillsdale College professor, and I look at just the state of education right now, and I think somebody from your team has a MEGA hat, not a MAGA hat. It says Make Education Great Again. I think that we might have an opportunity to do that because we have gone so far down the path on one way, we have to start pulling back, and that's what Hillsdale is doing.
That's exactly right. In fact, that was the first time I saw the hat was this morning. We have a beautiful model wearing it. His name is Juan. He's fantastic. That's part of reclaiming education. That's part of it, there's no doubt.
So why were you here?
I was invited to give a talk on Marxism, of all things, and the title, which I did not come up with, but I thought it was great, Why Does It Persist to Haunt America and the World? And the basic thesis that I put forward, drawing exclusively from Marx's writings, was that Marxism feasts on capitalism, and as long as there's prosperity in capitalism, and as long as there's a state, i.e. borders, and as long as there's religion, Marxism will persist because it sees those as formidable enemies for advancing a kind of march of history towards a utopia. So it creates this very adversarial relationship with nations, with religion, especially the Catholic Church, with capitalism and private property. So somebody like Trump, who runs on a closed border or national interest first, and he defends Christianity, he would be a total persona non grata in the new Marxist world that we now have. So
yeah, and private property rights are essential to a free capitalistic society because you have to have some ownership, some skin in the game. You have to say, this is mine, and I have to work for it to keep it and to have that to continue everything.
Correct. Well, it's intrinsic. I mean, anyone who advances a theory of private property, whether actually it's Aquinas or John Locke, the idea is that these are rights that are given to you by God and nature's God. They're not something they're not entitlements given to you by government. And the whole purpose of a classical liberal form of government would be to create a government that would protect those. But the understanding is these are inalienable rights that come from a higher authority than man or government. But you can see why it's so important that natural rights never loses contact with the traditional belief in Christianity and in the necessity of government. And Marxism opposes both of those things.
Yeah, so this is so important because there's a lot of, for a good reason. The good reason is that we're going back to first things all over the place. Like philosophy is new again. It's in the headlines. Mm-hmm. Everyone here, I hear these debates about what citizenship is. This is just what people are asking these as open-ended questions because they're confronted with them in order to move forward in the kind of open-ended frontier that we're living in right now. Mm-hmm. So to go back to the natural rights, don't you see it as interesting that there's a lot of people who want to combat Marxism, communism, whatever, but they don't really necessarily want to ground those rights in the laws of nature and nature's God.
Yeah, the danger in that is you're playing right into Marxist hands because according to Marx and many of his followers, like Daniel de Leon, for example, the obstacles that prevent Marxism for full, complete takeover of history are exactly what you just said, natural rights and religion. And so if you think you can have a conservative post-liberal position, good luck, because those are formidable barriers towards Marxism. So I think what is so great about what I'm feeling right now across the country and also just even in Europe is people are waking up to the necessity of national sovereignty, to the necessity of the protection of rights, to the consent of the governed, because the left has overplayed its hand. I mean, it's been taking people's borders and their national sovereignty and rights away, and the reaction has not just been in America, it's been global, especially even in Europe.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that reaction, especially here. But it is interesting to me that what you're describing, this debate won't go anywhere. I'll tell you, everyone in the audience, because there's so many people who, even on the sort of new realigning coalition, are either, sort of watered down, right, not liberalism of the last, 60 years.
Right.
They don't want to talk about nature or God, or the sort of transhumanist, tech future, but anything goes.
Yeah.
And we're going to find out again that we need to go back to actually what the good professor is talking about. But I'm curious, you came from Hillsdale, right?
Correct.
So you came from the college campus.
All these opinions are mine. They don't reflect the college. Whatever the usual caveats.
I think some of them may kind of reflect a lot of the college.
No comment.
But look, you flew from Hillsdale, Michigan, which is a wonderful place, pristine place, came to Phoenix, and you walked in and you gave a talk about all these, highfalutin ideas to a big crowd. How did that go?
We had to turn people away. It was crazy. We were violating the fire code. I think they thought Tucker was talking, first of all. And then when they saw me, half the room left. But so it was packed. They were very much engaged. They had to kick us out of the room after it was over. People were quite engaged. What I did was essentially take out passages from the 1844 manuscripts and also the Communist Manifesto, and just read them out loud and literally engaged as if we were having a conversation at the dinner table. And people were very much responsive. They were totally, they wanted to follow up afterwards and have conversations and exchange emails. So we went over really well. I couldn't have asked for a better audience.
I remember my first real dive deep into communism and Marxism was with Reagan in his own hand, his radio addresses back in the 70s as the governor of California. And he would go through and he would just write about, okay, this is what communism looks like, right? And I look at Donald Trump on the campaign trail this year, along with J.D. Vance. They were both very good at saying this is the renewed American dream. We need to make sure that you have that ability to go out and be, everything that you can be and have that great idealism. But when I would read Ronald Reagan, and he would be like, okay, well, what's happening is you're not all going to be at the top equally. You're going to be at the bottom equally. They want to make sure that you have equal outcomes, and they will take everything away from you so that you all start at the same level. And to me, I just remember being, I was probably like in early high school when I first really started diving into this, and I just couldn't believe that this is something that a large portion of the world is like, yeah, that's the idea. We need to go further down this path.
Yeah. I mean, I think the problem with Marxism is that it's so out of touch with reality and just human nature. People want to be part of a prosperous society. I think the reason why Marxism morphed into cultural Marxism is they couldn't win the debate on economic terms and on political terms. Tocqueville makes this observation about America where everybody in America, regardless of how poor they are, have this optimism about their future, that they will at least be better off than the generation before them. And I think that's a really interesting observation on his part. And I think messages from Reagan to Trump that speak about prosperity and greatness really resonate in the human heart. And Marxism can't really touch that. You're going to have income inequality. But at the end of the day, people recognize that there is something to be said about the fact that if you put in enough work and discipline and focus, and you can achieve upward mobility and prosperity, that's always going to speak, I think, to the optimistic spirit of Americans.
So you were saying before we came on as well that in the speech you talk about a spiritual warfare in regards to Marxism. Explain that.
Correct. Well, I think when a lot of people, so one of the comments I got after the talk was from a professor of economics. And he said that he had always been teaching Marx, and he'd been teaching him from an economic point of view. It's like teaching Adam Smith from an economic point of view. You're going to get a lot out of it, but neither were really economists. They were political philosophers. And so the dimension that he said he had never seen before is how Marx, in many ways, speaks in language of eschatology and theology, whether he knows it or not. He sees the world in this binary of oppressor and oppressed. But at the end of the day, he believes that what he's doing is overcoming a certain kind of evil, and he identifies religion among the biggest obstacles to his utopia. To me, that is a spiritual warfare, and as long as you understand Marx in terms of just cheap sneakers versus, high cost of labor, you're going to lose the argument, because there's more to Marx than just making an economic argument. He himself makes a theological argument, I believe, in most of his writings. Now, most people wouldn't agree with that definition, but what I mean by that, it presupposes a certain hostility to religion and to hierarchy, and especially to the Catholic Church, that I think needs to be really looked at carefully.
I want to bring this into today's conversation, and we're here at America Fest. Donald Trump has been reelected. Everybody here is very excited to see what the future has.
This is the real party of joy, Jill.
It actually is,
party
though,
of joy.
right?
Trump is on the way. He'll be here tomorrow.
Where they were trying to make it out on the leftists, they would tell you they were joyful. Were they actually living a life of joy? People really wouldn't think so. They would have to convince you how joyful they were, and whenever you have to do that.
They spent $1 billion staging the party of joy.
Yes.
It shows you how out of touch they were, and the reason why I think Trump was so successful, there was many reasons. One of them was the party that couldn't handle inflation and couldn't understand the average American's financial burdens, was celebrating joy at a time when none of their party or most Americans weren't experiencing any joy. So just to show you how aloof and disconnected, and I think Trump's ability to connect with the American voters is just
they're used to just being able to tell you this is what you should feel, feel it, right? But that's not exactly what's going on. People can feel that disconnect in their own lives, and they're like, something's not right here.
Well, do you remember when the mainstream media would have video of whatever president, like in shopping for milk, and they're supposed to know what the price of milk and all that? What happened, since Trump first ran, is he single-handedly destroyed the traditional media. He called them fake news until people got the message. And then when Elon purchased Twitter and basically allowed people to just stream and tweet, and then whether it is misinformation or not, people are able to communicate what's happening on the ground immediately. The message of the mainstream media, like feel joy, just fell on deaf ears. There's another media now, and it's really organic. It's from the ground up.
Yeah, this is one of the most amazing things about the last few years, right? Was that purchase. I think it's interesting to think about in terms of you, our professor of statesmanship, political philosophy. That's what Hillsdale's all about. It's interesting to think about how in the commercial and cultural space now, there is a kind of statesmanship that people aren't talking about. Because what Musk did was an act of statesmanship. There's no way around that,
It's so funny. I just had this.
Yeah.
So after my talk, somebody came up to me and they said, what do you think about entrepreneurship? Has there been a decline in it? And I said, you don't understand entrepreneurship. By definition, it's exceedingly rare. If you look at Austrian economics, they look at entrepreneurship, strictly speaking, from an economic point of view. It's recognizing inefficiencies and capitalizing them. That's not sufficient. Statesmanship is what entrepreneurialism truly is. And if you look at all the great innovators in our country, from Ford to Elon, they've all taken a stake and position in politics because they see that true entrepreneurship is taking advantage and figuring out a way to overcome inefficiencies in daily life and government. It's not simply something that's just commercial. And I think if you look at it, all great entrepreneurs have always had an eye toward politics, towards the law. And in fact, again, Alexis de Tocqueville, one of the points that he makes in Democracy in America is that America is a place where you're going to have innovation and industry, but the only way it's possible is if the captains of industry are connected to global politics and domestic politics, because it's the nature of all our businesses now to be connected to politics. So entrepreneurship is not just about econ, it's about politics.
And I love it on our side because you can go through and century after century after century, it holds true,
Absolutely.
Right? We have that on our side. Khalil, it's been such a fascinating conversation. Where can people follow you at?
I'm not on social media, but you can reach out at Hillsdale. I know, maybe I should get on. Let's see.
Elon owns X.
If you go
now,
to Hillsdale's
okay.
faculty page, right?
Come on.
I can go on X now. That's
right.
I'll create a Twitter. I'll follow Matt.
Free speech is going to live.
Follower I get.
There you go. Well, Khalil Habib, such a great conversation. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.